You're right, Arshaya. It is priceless because it's timeless space in which no life form, no unit of consciousness directed energy is experiencing itself feeding on another life form, which means life forms are manifesting what it is that they're experiencing by virtue of being the energy that they are that is manifesting what they thus experience next, which is the eternal life creation spheres, creation mechanics that we started. That's exactly right, girl. That's the real third eye. Very good. Very, very good. Thank you very much, Christopher Comstock, for putting that out. And I want to commend you, young man, because this is sort of what I do. I'm what's called a translator, which is a map reader of the math and the geometry, because we know, because we created it, how it's supposed to work, right? And how that fits into a retrovirus. Let's retrofit this universe and change it the way we want to change it in order to suit us, because we know more than the one how to create something different than what it began with, right? That means you know the original creation matrix, the first one, how real eternal energy creation spheres make manifest what you experience next that you have the ability to do with your real third eye. That is precisely correct. Thank you for putting that up, Christopher. So what I notice what Christopher is doing now, which is brilliant, because you realize if you want to keep things down to the least common denominator of the truth, speaking the universal truth, you'll know it's the truth because your soul will know it, because of the work that's been done, which is really bioregenesis. There was a couple of videos that I watched this morning, which was not only The Real Third Eye by Christopher Comstock, because it was only a very, very short video. He edited that. Very good. Because when you start building larger and larger and larger libraries, which is what I call all the minutia of everything that's held in cellular memory that we can all talk about, go on and on and on, we forget where we started, because now we're off way someplace else in the universe of information, visual information of what's held in cellular memory. So that's why throughout my life I was trying to keep it simple. Let's see if I can do eternal creation mechanics in 5 minutes. Transfer that knowledge into another unit of consciousness that goes, snap. Whoa, it's that simple. Yeah, it actually is. And really, the simplicity of that's what we call basic logic, base. Like in base 12 math, right? Programming matter, a programmable radio set, a programmable radio star. Programming the matter state, what we're experiencing holographically, and the speed at which we're experiencing in which that takes place. So when you're experiencing eternity in your own heart and your soul, then you realize you are the source from which what you experience in your mirror is what you're experiencing, what comes back to you in your mirror at the speed at which you're experiencing it. That's a true creator God. But I don't use the word God because the way that all the programming worked, through all the religious programming, God is perceived as male, right? So as a monad polarity integrator, I'm a one. That's what a monad is. I'm a one. The first pillar of light, which is eternal light, which goes on forever, gifting electrons at the highest rate of speed. I know, Mama. And so when you keep things small, then you go, wow, now you'll process that instead of having to process a gazillion other bits and bytes of visual information. So, and you notice this particularly when you're working with folks that are not experiencing your vibe, right? And you want to communicate something, keep it short, because you realize their attention span, their ability right, to hold a lot of information, which is a lot of energy that is happening simultaneously, their ability to process and hold that much energy and see how it's all connected with each other through neurons, like a network, which is like, how big is your network? That you realize is represented by everything that is being experienced simultaneously that we're experiencing in us, which is the communication platform. So when you've gone cosmic, because I'm Ecosphere, which means, if I've shared this before, it's like my head is at the center point of Mama's magnetosphere. The ecospheres, the echo worlds, ecosphere. That's ecosphere level consciousness, right? So that would be 15D. She's right about that, which is what, 6? So you see how their 666 beast technology was in a race against time, kickstart everything that they were going to bring out, when they were going to bring it out. And so it's not like we didn't know when that was going to happen. So this is why from the time that I came in as a child, and I saw that meme yesterday about what an anon is, which is a non-programmable unit, as somebody asked me a long time ago, when you came in 1951, were you already awake? Okay, so now we're going to define what it means to be awake. You know what awake is when you go to awake. Now we're back into using definitions in the context, because remember, every discipline, whether you're in biology, whether you're a pathologist, whether you're, no matter what field of interest, that you're going to use your conscience to go learn what that material has to say about that science, has their own set of terms and definitions by which they operate their operating systems on, right? So one of the other videos that I watched this morning that was very short, which was when I was a small child, and I, activate your aquapharian indigo shield, right? Because you realize that the encryption of this planet was severely damaged, because you already know why it is that you're here, for the mission that you're going to perform while you're here. So she mentioned something, or Shia mentioned something that was very important, because I already know this from personal experience. Okay, and that is that you're not ever going to win a battle, a spiritual battle, with a fallen state of consciousness that refuses to take responsibility for what it is experiencing within itself, which is fallen consciousness, which is like saying it can't help itself. Okay, so I knew as a child that, so how are you going to respond to that? How are you going to react to that? Well, when you're a monad as a polarity integrator, she mentioned this, and that is frequency. That's right. Which means we don't use our energy the same way they use their energy. These are units of consciousness that are sick. They're mentally ill. They operate on the mental pathway through a dead energy magnet, which is artificial light, which is a black hole, which means they're chasing electrons trying to catch up to zero to see if they can balance their account, right? So you realize how they keep losing more and more energy, which means they keep expanding more and more of what they're aware of, which is a deeper hole. So it implodes and then it explodes. That's how the Bardo measurement works. The quantum probability of them being able to bioregenerate, which is recover what they've lost as a result of what they've done to themselves by virtue of the choices that they make. And trying to self-correct. You know what self-correcting tape is, right? Tape delay, self-correcting the tape, trying to recover what they once lost as a result of what they experienced. That fractured what they lost, which are soul fragments. Right? Till there's nothing left. Right? Except artificial light. Right? Which is dead light. So you realize how this works when you start from the center point of the first sphere, the first Krystic star, which is eternity, which is the eternal spark, right? You're not ever going to put that light out, which means you're not ever going to put that love engine out of creation out. So you can see how fast, with the frame of reference that I had when I was a child, particularly when I was in Reno, Nevada, when I went out that morning, I could experience how much light had actually risen by how successful we are throughout the entire Milky Way galaxy. And that was in the summer of 2020. So I began to realize, because you can do this math, because of the acceleration of electrons when you're the one. When I realized how long ago, when you realize, there is no time, which is why it's priceless, because you're always in a state of your mind, your higher mind, your soul is in a state of harmony, in a state of balance. You're naturally in a state of balance. So your radio set is in a state of balance. So you know how to frequency modulate your radio set to balance the waves, so none of the waves are canceling out the other waves, right? Or breaking the waves, which means they're not distorted. So you're not experiencing your consciousness being in a distorted state, right? And this is when you get into the competing spirals. One that's trying to cancel the other out in order for us to experience what it is instead of what we are. And this naturally or unnaturally gets translated, but knowing the difference between the mirrors, knowing one from the other, which is knowing what's real from what's not real. So that's something that you determine within your own soul's self, your true self, by experiencing what love is, because we know that love is real, which is real energy, which is real living energy. Right? And now you're into living energies and dead energies. And knowing the difference between living energy, a live one, a live wire, right? A live spiral, right? And one that keeps losing energy as a result of what it keeps doing to itself because it's not learning fast enough to make a correction. And bioregenerate the loss that they keep losing, which is why they keep chasing more and more and more and more and more electrons. And you can measure that over time space. Just from the time that I was born in 1951, which is what I was measuring, is called the rate of change, to self-correct and bioregenerate, which is to recover what is lost as a result of what it does. So she mentioned how if you're a parent, right, and you gave birth to a star, and you're an eternal star, and you gave birth to a star that's experiencing what you are, which is eternity. And now they have, if you will, their free will choices. They're free to choose because that's what, hey, I am what love is. Right? And that frees your spirit. Now you're able to manifest what it is you experience next. You're a real creator being, co-creating what you're experiencing, using what love is, which is eternity, to experience what you experience next, whatever that is. If they're opening and closing of a circuit, which is moving at such a high rate of speed because you're properly grounded to the one. Right? The Krystic spiral, you're running the Krystic spiral. Right? So you're free. So it's like, hey, I got a permit to create whatever I want because I'm experiencing what love is, which is doing it. So you are the energy that is in the mirror, which is what you're manifesting what's in the mirror. So the very idea that you need energy from some other life form. Remember, I covered that when I was a little child. I'm not supposed to be experiencing a lion eating a zebra. I can remember a time when a lion could manifest and its own life form because it's experiencing eternal energy. So whatever it's manifesting, that's what it experiences next. That lion's not needing to eat a zebra because it needs energy. Bang. That's a real third eye. So when you already know these things as a child, you already have a frame of reference of what's true. Of how it really works. Real works. Really works. That's where I knew as a child this is an illusion. We're running fake programs. Simulation after simulation after simulation after simulation after simulation after simulation within a simulation. Just stick that CD disc in the back of your head, which is read-only memory. Right? So it's a game. It becomes a binary video game. Holding soul consciousness trapped into a system in which you're dealing with a universe, if you will, that's fallen. Because the amount of damage that's been done to this particular Cathar grid. So you realize, oh, there are other grid mechanics. Yes, they're called the Echo worlds. Echo. So she covered how the boomerang works. So when the shield is activated, that becomes your protection. So that you can do the work that you're doing so that your circuits, if you will, the speed at which you're experiencing what you can do when you're phasing in and out as fast as the one does because you're with the one, then the one is always with you. So you're able to do the work of the one on behalf of what love is because you're experiencing eternal love through your own heart. And what that allows you to do is what? Hold the higher bands, the higher frequency bands. Now you're running a powerful radio set, and that's doing work. And what that means is I don't have to engage with them and play ping pong, right? Trying to wage war directly, face to face, going into a courtroom. Because it's very rare to ever win against something that's mentally ill. Even though I have had a lot of experiences in courtrooms, having been arrested for all the reasons and collisions that I've talked about before, which deals with trauma, endocrine disruptors, how all this works. When you end up becoming targeted, next thing you know, you run into somebody and don't even realize that you met them because that was planned. It was supposed to make that intersection with you, and I already covered that in many other videos, right? But I have met folks that work in the legal community, if you will, on behalf of either the United States government or the state or the county, right, who realize that their own state of consciousness is held captive by the very system that they operate in, which means they're being honest. And that would include everybody across the entire spectrum. I think it was Robert David Steele said at one time, a case manager of the CIA, the system is broken. So you have good people trapped in a bad system. So now you're into system designs. That's the beast system technology. Design. What they designed does not work as it was originally created, which means the original, the first one. Okay? The first matrix, if you will. Eternal life creation matrices. So that you're not needing any energy from anything, okay? You are the source of energy from which you're manifesting in real time using real energy because your consciousness is real, which means your consciousness is not dead light. You're not dead light energy. You're a live one. So you can see how this works when you're in a system, when you're going like this, measuring the differences in the bands, the waves of consciousness that's experiencing itself connected to other units of consciousness, right? And that represents endocrine receptors, right? Neurons communicating to other neurons, right? And broken circuits and how that works between breaking waves, which is breaking the spiritual flow, the natural spiritual flow of eternal energy creation mechanics. It's just like this morning. Not a coincidence it pops up because you now see that there are identities coming on and showing their face, right? And communicating with us in very specific, certain translated ways in which those letters, which represent fire letters, which represents the energy of their consciousness, they're now identifying themselves as a particular race line. Like this morning, I saw a lady that said she's a seraphim. Okay, well, I remember a lady who identified her identity as being seraphim, which is Anna von Reitz, right? And made a comment to Kim Gogoon one time about a seraphim chips being here, right? If Kim Gogoon decided she was, playing the ping pong. Remember the man of trust, everything that Kim Gogoon has talked about. So what's happening now is that there's been a sufficient enough work that's been done anchoring when we came in here to do the work that we did and the waves in which they appeared. Came in here, like when I came in 1951, that they and this was the race against time, if you will, waking people up, which really is the speed at which bioregenesis is taking place, which is what I call clearing the cobwebs, clearing the nets, which are preventing for the higher frequencies that we're able to anchor with our shield to bring them in and pull that energy from another echo worlds down in here, right? And now that of is now being communicated through the lines of communication, right? Through the ley lines, if you will, through the DNA, the language of maps, mapping the technology, mapping the consciousness field. And you realize as people are bioregenerated at a higher rate of speed because they made agreements, right? The Emerald Covenant Agreement, they agreed they were going to honor their word and be a part of the bioregenesis program. So you see how that works with salvage mission, salvage contract, bioregenesis contract. And the way that you can tell that is by virtue of what they communicate to us. Right? So in this particular case, when I heard this lady who identified as a seraphim, she was doing a meditation translation and using much the same terminology that you find in the Bible, which is the religious programming as a result of both the Anunnaki and the Draco that are control. So she made very specific relationships, for example, the God related. Most of what she said in the beginning was to establish a foundation, which begins the establishment of the foundation, which was when I was introduced to the Bible. When I was a child, it was all based on patriarchy. Okay, which you can see, it's all about male, as if it began with the male, the father, right? And that's not how I translate it. And you're a polarity integrator, being the one as a monad, which means there is no difference between what you are and what I am. I'm giving love to you forever. So when I say that, does that have anything to do with gender? No, that has everything to do with nuclear power, which is hot fission and cold fusion, atmospherics, pressure, right? Spirals, curved space vectors, and maintaining the balance of the atoms as the atom cycle. So you know there was a first atom, right? The first electron that is alive and conscious and aware of itself, being the eternal spirit of fire, which is an eternal Krystic star. So you know that the one does not identify itself as the one, as being one without being the other at the same time. Which means there isn't any separation between what you are as a girl, as a flower, and what I am as the seed makes it grow. The love that makes it grow. The highest acceleration of electrons. That is expanding the light, which is expanding the consciousness to experience more of what we are generating out of eternal love. So we're not needing any energy out of anybody. We are the engine of creation itself. The first engine. So that first engine is eternal love. That's as simple as it gets. So we can dismiss with this he and she and her and him and her and how all that convoluted stuff, you got to realize that if there's a God, there's got to be a female in him somewhere, right? So I've explained how I experience myself in the relationships that I've had with different females is to impart with them that I am everything that you are that I'm giving love to, so that you're experiencing everything that you are, which is what love is, that I experience in me, which stands to reason because I've been a female before and a female avatar, and I'm in a male avatar now. So when you realize your energy is in everything, because everything that represents what energy is, which is consciousness, creation, mechanics, everything that you are is what I am, I'm giving love to. So simplify it, an eternal love vibration. Right? Now you're experiencing everything else in the mirror that represents what love creates. Out of whole cloth. Being whole. Being whole. And that's what it's like to be a monad experiencing eternal spirit of fire. So that's what we do. So when we come in, we anchor the shield, right? And start broadcasting. And what do you know? Look what's happened. If I go back from my childhood and how folks were waking up little bit by little bit, and I mentioned that I saw that little meme yesterday that you realize how many folks were fast asleep and how those are carried through the myths and legends of certain stories like, what is it, Rip Van Winkle, the story of Sleepy Hollow. You know, it's all coded. You know, it's all in these stories, right? So it's a matter of filtering out. I'll get rid of this. I'll get rid of that. I'll get rid of that. Okay, I'm only looking for one little message in here, which is called a translation. Now you're looking at the speed at which you can translate and map read the train that got perverted. That's what it is. It's a perversion of the original celestial mechanics of experiencing eternal love everywhere you go. See? So that's a different measurement. That's a cosmic level measurement. Right? So as I've said many times, anywhere you find love in living spirit, you'll find us. Because that's what it began with. So I try and simplify this and just say I just represent tech support. I'm just one tech support operator down here as a monad, trying to do everything I can to help keep the poles in balance while other work is being done. I'm not the only polarity integrator here. Okay, there's a lot of us that came in a lot of ways because you realize how many polarity integrators would be needed to maintain the poles when you got a state of consciousness that's not in balance. Right? Balance between the male and the female, right? I'm both, right? The seed needs a grower, right? Now you get to experience the flower. While I'm just as much that flower, I'm giving love to you that I'm being that flower. Well, I'm the flower. Yeah, because the energy that generated that flower that I'm seeing in my mirror is what I created. I know and so this is where when she mentioned about being firm, like terra firma, and there are different words that I've used, but I try and maintain a certain sense of humor because of the way that the language works in a map reading of stars, translocation, how that works, and being able to go wherever you want to go, wherever you want to go. Right? All the doors are open. All the locks and keys just automatically open for your energy. Right? Naturally, without even having to think about it. Doesn't require having to ask somebody else in order to go wherever you want to go. Right? That's what happens when you experience eternal life. That means the one is everywhere simultaneously. So wherever the one is, we are. Okay? And so you realize it goes on forever. You could tell stories forever about all the places that you've experienced because you're there. That's the real third eye. You better believe it. Thank you for putting that up, Christopher Comstock, and editing it down to a very small piece. That's why I recommend Christopher Comstock for those that are interested in Krystic spiral information, right? Translated in very short segments, and the benefit of doing it in short segments so that we don't end up opening up big libraries and getting lost in all the minutia when you just bring it all down, condense it all back down, right? Sound buffer it into very simple elements. You know, the elemental command, having the elemental command, you know, the 144s, 144 elements. How many frequencies can you run? How many bands can you run? And I realized when some folks were saying, well, that doesn't, just because you're in a higher dimension, just because you have more strands available to you doesn't make us better than anybody else. And I just simplify that and say, hey, I honor the one. I am what love is. It goes on forever. The advantage, if there's any advantage, is simply the fact that if you're a guardian, you're not going to be a guardian if you're running on low bands. So if you truly want to be a guardian in order to protect everything that love created, as love is creating more of what it's aware of, which is itself, what love is, it goes on forever to create more stuff out of what love is, right? More life forms, more visuals, right? If you're part of everything that is happening at the speed at which all that is taking place and you want to be able to experience all of it, right? Then you can imagine what it's like to be able to have cosmic level access to all the frequencies and codes that are represented by what is taking place simultaneously, to be able to experience all of that, right? So that's called growth potential or speed potential or learning potential, right? I think it was Patty Broussard that mentioned it one time about the Elven, and I know an Elven that is just absolutely takes my breath away when I experience her tones, her axial spin tones. It's just like, whoa. She slows you right down. Whoa, experience the essence of that girl's spirit. Powerful stuff. And so I made a couple comments to her about, wow, the essence of your spirit, you never forgot the language of the founder races, young lady. And she put a little heart up there and acknowledged that. And that's how we acknowledge each other, with hearts, with love. Because they still got the crystal spiral running within them that they're experiencing in them. And that energy is unmistakably mapped and translated, which means I know who she is. I know her essence. That's knowing the true essence of that spirit, which is represented by the soul matrix energy of that soul. That's what it is. It's a map read of soul and spirit, which are the codes that they're running on by virtue of the frequencies and the tones and the actual spin rotation of experiencing how much love they're experiencing in their heart, which means they have bioregenerated. That's an Elven who's bioregenerated. And this is what Arshaya was talking about when those races that chose the contract to bioregenerate and reclaim their energy, so we can experience what it's like when it's described as the awareness of innocence, which means they don't live in any fear of being able to express their true essence. Now we know who you really are, which means we now know through experience what it feels like in spirit and soul to experience your soul and the essence of your spirit. Now I know. Now I can feel the real you. Meaning, she is not trying to pretend to be something, anything else than her true self, her true soul self, where the essence of her spirit is communicating with us. Now I know she's real. Now I would say, you're real. It's just like when Annabelle was watching my first videos and she gave me a beautiful compliment, and it always warms my heart when she mentioned me, thank you for being real. And that's what it's like to experience being fearless, because love is the absence of fear to truly express who you are. And that gets back to being terra firma, or being firm. And the challenge that I had as a child when I realized that I was being insulted, or if you will, the one is being insulted, love is being insulted, the eternal spirit of fire, the eternal spirit of absolute love is being insulted. So when I stand up and honor the one, which is to honor what love is forever, which is to honor the highest superconductor law, as the first accelerator, which is the eternal acceleration of electrons, in which the light is holding in consciousness what we're experiencing by virtue of what we're creating, and we're doing that with the love that we are, that others experience through us, the true nature of our spiritual flow, which is no broken arrows, which is meaning that the gyroscope, the gyro neuroscopic transmitters, which means the camera eye of what we're experiencing in neurons, right? The gyroscope is not broken. The cross, the vertical and the horizontal stabilizers are perfectly balanced. That means that all the neuron transmitters, the chemical messengers, are all perfectly balanced because they're all doing a dance. And that's called a dance of freedom. I don't like the word Dom, but that's a dance of a free spirit. That means that all the spirits that are in the energy, down to the spirit molecule, the smallest unit of energy that is consciousness, experiencing what we are, which is what love is. So you can realize how that works with an eternal creation matrix, right? Where every life form is experiencing eternity. That means that that life form doesn't have any reason, and it has no instruction set that says, hey, I need energy from you, so I'm going to consume the energy that you are, which means it's not needing to eat a zebra in order to experience that biovoltage that's been lost out of that animal. Not needing to do that. That means that the zebra is getting along and can sit down right next to that lion. How you doing, pal? Because they can both translate the language of love. Whoa, really? Yes. That's part of the message with the lamb and the lion. Remember seeing that? The lion sits down with the lamb. They're pals. That's why when I was a little kid, I thought of everything that was in my mirror as a playmate. That's right, a playmate. Mated chip. That's a monad. That means that the male and the female, the magnets become one. That's a blast furnace. So that's why it's sort of an insult to me when I always hear right out of the speakerphone about God, because of all the programming of it all being one side versus the other side. When both those magnets come together to become one, that is a third eye that is non-polarized. That's a true, real monad. Okay? That is not running distorted waves of communication. That communication is what love is, which is as real as it gets. So this is like going back to when I was a little kid back in the early 1950s, coming full circle back to where we're at now, and the message is still the same, right? And so when she described what it was like to experience those folks that are mentally ill, right, that's why I cried for so many times throughout my life, I cry for them, even though I realize that they're doing things to me as a result of that that cause us to experience trauma. And then recovering that, becoming whole again. Right? So they're mentally ill. Their mind is imbalanced. They're not experiencing being whole. They're not experiencing being one with all creation, which means they're not experiencing what real love is, true love, unconditional love. They're not experiencing the one through their own heart and soul. And that's why it's so painful when you come in here as a polarity integrator and what our job is to do. So she was absolutely right. Running frequencies. That's what we do. We run the frequencies. We hold the power. Since we are the power, the generating power of the first creation, the first waveform, the first Krystic spiral, we're always with the one. So that's the work we do on behalf of the one. That's right. So I wanted to share that this morning because waking up to a couple of those little videos with that information, that real third eye is like, I know, it's like I knew that when I was 4 years of age, but nobody's listening, right? But they are, when you think of over time space vectors, from decade to decade to decade, right? What do you know? I'm experiencing more of what I am, which is what love is, right? Now they're identifying who they are on the internet. That is a measurement of the success of bioregenesis, actually, by those that accepted and have honored the contracts, right, to restore the law of one, experiencing being love, experiencing being well, experiencing what it's like to experience being healthy and happy and joyful and spirit and living spirit with your soul. So we know how to do that. And so that takes work. The inner work, and the inner work that others experience in them as a result of what others do. That's why we're all healing ourselves. That's what it means to be whole. We're all in this together. There isn't any separation between what I am, what you are, I'm giving love to. We're all one. One grand creation. It began with a one, the first spiral. That's who we are. So have a beautiful day. I love you all. It's a sunny day. It is a Sunday. Mua.